Good evening. I'm Casey Nolan. After a big win in the city and a more narrow victory in the county, the measure known to many as the arch tax is now a reality. It is a symbol of our city and an international icon, so it's no surprise that the Gateway Arch has become the focal point of the discussion around this tax. Proposition P will raise about $38 million a year for 20 years, and part of that money will be used to redesign, reshape, and we're told reinvigorate the arch grounds. But the arch isn't the only place you'll see Prop P at work. It will pay for improvements to parks and trails across the region. This measure has also ignited a conversation about the kind of city we want to live in and the future of St. Louis. And tonight, that's where this conversation is going. So we hope you'll stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Ed Reggie with Stay Tuned, and I want to tell you that you play a critical part of the conversation tonight, and I want to hear from you. I want to know when you're watching the show, what you resonate with and what you might disagree with. We also want to know why having well-funded parks or urban green spaces have an impact on our region. And there are several ways that you can actually join in the conversation. Earlier today, we put a question on Facebook. You can log on there and put a comment or a question. You can also send us a tweet using the hashtag StayTunedSTL. Let's actually see what you're already saying.
All right, we're starting off with our journalist roundtable to kind of break down the results, and I'm going to ask you what we can learn from these results about where we may be headed as the conversation. We're looking forward tonight. Nick Pister from the Post-Dispatch, thank you for being here. Amir Kotovic from St. Louis Business Journal, and Jason Rosenbaum from the St. Louis Beacon. I appreciate all of you being here. First, the results. Any surprise that this tax passed? We're not exactly in an economic boom time right now. Any surprise?
Yes, I'm surprised. I did not think it was going to pass in St. Louis County, although it did pass. It was a closer margin than what you would have thought, but to me, there was no real publicity campaign done, and that was done for a reason. And so as we're going to be getting into talking about what is the real message of this vote, are people really excited about the arch? You didn't really see that from the campaign that was going on, but a lot of us did not expect to see the county pass this measure.
And just to make sure everyone is clear, this had to pass in both counties. Originally, it said the language was it had to pass in 2 out of 3, city, St. Louis County, St. Charles County. St. Charles County did not put it on the ballot. And that's the next question I want to ask. Speaking of Twitter that Ed talked about, even before the show started, we had questions on Twitter. St. Charles was still in the language. Does St. Charles see any of the money from this?
Not from this tax. They are part of Great Rivers Greenway, which means that a 1/10 sales tax that voters there approved in 2000, that will still be in effect, and trails there will happen. But the county council in St. Charles decided not to put it on the ballot. And frankly, they're probably not going to put it on the ballot regardless of this. And even if they put it on the ballot, I don't think it would pass there for various reasons. So they won't see any of the additional money that would go toward parks. They're not going to be contributing to the Arch Grounds project, and they are probably never going to join in this any time in the near future.
Surprised that it passed?
Actually, I'm not as surprised as Nick was, simply because if you look at the axiom of ballot initiatives in general, if you have one well-funded campaign on the yes side and you have another no side that has basically no money, they had some organization, I know the St. Louis County Republicans were involved, I would say 8 times out of 10, the yes side is going to pass. Now, it was a very narrow victory in St. Louis County for various reasons. I think It could be because there were a lot of hotly contested races in the western part where there tend to be more Republicans, but the pro side was much more organized. They had a lot more money. They were sending out mailers to people that usually get out in municipal elections, and the no side basically had no actual money to use. So I wasn't as surprised, but it was definitely close. So.
And I'll pretty much echo that. I mean, before the election, I spoke with the organization behind, putting this together, and they had done their polling, and they had made calls and done polling and public opinion polling to see if they had the support, and they were fairly certain that they had the support. And also, as Jason was saying, there really was not a cohesive opposition to this. There were some people from certain parts saying various reasons why this may not be the best thing to do at this time, given the economy and the money and that it's a sales tax. But there wasn't there wasn't a group, there wasn't any money being raised, and there was no advertising against this. So it was bound to pass, at least in my opinion.
And it did pass. So going forward, is this amount of money, how much are we talking about total?
$31.4 million, that's what the estimate is per year.
For 20 years, correct?
And it could change depending on how much sales tax gets done, but that's the estimate.
Okay, so is this enough money to do something radical and something we'll see and be able to see what we get for our money here?
Well, that'll be up to, there's still a lot of private donations that need to be raised for this. A lot of the Arch project itself has been funded, the so-called LID, as I'm told now, it's not to be called that, it's supposed to be called a park over a highway or something like that. There's still some people upset about this. So a lot of people don't think the project is what the city really needs. St. Louis has gravitated to these big ticket items for a long time, and most of them have failed. St. Louis Center, Union Station, the Arch itself was supposed to revitalize downtown, and what are we doing now? We're trying to redevelop the grounds, thinking that's going to be what it is. I think what they really need to do is build it, but the real test of it comes immediately after. Is it going to bring the type of retail? Is there going to be a residential component? Are they going to develop west of the Arch in any significant way? Are people really going to come down to this space and actually use it? A lot of people in the county don't. St. Charles Countyans are now going to get this, basically for free. Are they going to come down and use it? And the last thing you want is this very nice landscaped area or museum under the Arch with no one there. Tourists are already going to the Arch. Is it going to bring more people there? Are they going to say, oh, I heard that they just redid the grounds underneath it? I doubt it. So it's going to be about how is it promoted outside of here? Yeah. And how is it promoted here as well to get people to actually use it? And that's where I think the discussion is going to have to be going forward, because this could be a lot of money spent, and we have to make sure that it's spent still correctly. It's not just everyone's approved it. It needs to be, what are we going to do with it?
Will it be a part of our everyday lives?
I agree completely with Nick, especially about the tourism aspect. I think whether it will be actually practical toward that end is going to depend on how it's promoted. I usually save my personal stories toward the overtime segment, but I was recently in Italy, and I went to a lot of smaller towns than Rome or Florence where there are oodles of landmarks and places. And in the smaller towns, sometimes there's only just one or two things. And I don't want to say there's only one or two things in St. Louis, but the Arch is the preeminent thing you think about when you go to St. Louis. Just like how when my wife and I went to Lucca, which is a small town in Italy, the main thing there is their beautiful city walls that were turned into a bike path and a walking area. And that sort of got told to a lot of tourists, and a lot of tourists went for that sort of thing. The Arch is obviously bigger than a walking path or a bike trail, for example, but if it is, advertised correctly, that it has been refurbished, maybe more people will come, but it really is just going to depend on what's going on there with programming and whatnot.
From as the business reporter at the table, your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the thought behind this is that the Arch is the preeminent symbol of St. Louis. It is what you recognize St. Louis for. It is when somebody wants to do a commercial, they'll shoot palm trees in LA, the Arch in St. Louis, and then the Statue of Liberty. That's kind of America, and here's the middle, and this is the Arch. So from a business perspective, if you want to recruit businesses, recruit talent, this is the one place that you take them. It's just like when somebody has family coming from out of town, this is the one place that you take them. It's the first place that you take them. So I think the thought behind it is that this is the place that you have to show off what St. Louis is like, and it has to be the best that it can be. Now, do you get the most bang for your buck at the Arch? I'm not sure if I answer that question, but also you have to think about the fact that 2/3 of this money is not going to the Arch, and 2/3 of this money is going to a bunch of different organizations, and it's chopped up in tiny little bits. So there is not going to be one big project that comes from 2/3 of this money.
And you bring up a great point. That's an excellent segue. That we're talking about much more than just the Arch grounds here. What other ways will our region change with this money? Will we be able to see it change in other ways?
I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it change. There's certainly going to be changes, but a lot of this, the rest of this money is going to go to the county parks, to the city parks, to the trails, and there are a lot of projects that have not been funded over the last couple of years. There are probably bathrooms and benches and things that need to be fixed, and they probably will be fixed and they will be funded. But is it something that you will recognize as visible change and progress? I'm not sure if that's true.
I feel like you're both jumping in. Go.
I'll let you go first.
I want to get back to one thing on the Arch. Moving forward, one thing that always gets forgotten and no one still talks about it, but the Arch itself has discoloration and is staining and has rust, and they've been talking about trying to do something about it, and they've been very slow doing it because they've been trying to get everybody to try to redevelop the grounds underneath it. Perhaps when they're talking about this big anniversary, there will be some groundswell of people to actually clean the monument that we're all talking about and make it look, when you talk about it being the gateway to our city, it doesn't look the best it could be right now.
Which is, I know will come up in tonight's show, and again, it's not just a show about the Arch, but it is a federal park, if you will, national park.
That's a break in precedent. I sent an email to somebody from the National Park Service, and they could think of no other example where a local funding source is going to refurbish land around a federal land. So, the reason it kind of breaks precedent is people can't expect the federal government to write a $300 million plus check to do this sort of project, which is why it's a private-public partnership. And, it's correct. The next step for City Arch River is whether they can raise a lot of this private money that will go toward the museum and the exhibits and a lot of other aspects. The public money will be going toward things that would usually go toward a public project, like sidewalks and lighting and those sort of things, but it's just unusual because of the designation of it being on federal land. So,
was this when the parks were included in this, was this a smart strategic move to get St. Louis County to pass this?
Absolutely.
Was this a carrot for the county here?
Absolutely. A lot of people who have followed the parks issue in St. Louis County knew how contentious that was in 2011. A lot of that money is not going to go necessarily to get a lot of the people that were laid off in 2012 back, from what Tom Ott told me. It's going to be going toward maintenance projects, and same in St. Louis City, as Amir kind of mentioned, benches, restrooms, everything that has kind of fallen by the wayside with the limited amounts of money.
Or just to cut you off for the sake of time,
sure.
You could also say this is this a change? The city is actually going to be paying for something that benefits the county. Can you look at this as an example of some regionalism here in terms of we're on the same page for a change, perhaps?
Not completely, because St. Charles isn't involved and Jeffco isn't involved, and none of the Illinois counties are involved. In fact, that's one of the main arguments why St. Charles isn't that enthused about it.
Yeah, I think that's, there was a lot of talk about regionalism after this passed, but St. Charles was not involved, Illinois was not involved, and St. Louis County and St. Louis City were able to vote, somewhat in concert together on something, but I don't think it was any, stunning thing that it happened that way.
Anything else has come to light while you guys have been reporting on this? Is there any sort of energy that you see that this is representative of the city and its citizens wanting to change or improve
Well, I mean, I think the other thing that needs to be mentioned about the park aspect is, especially in the city, there are just a ton of maintenance projects that they're going to need to be done, and $2.5 million extra per year, which is what is estimated in the city, and even $6 million in the county, is not going to be able to fix every single problem. I think that the parks director in St. Louis City said that there's over $170 million worth of projects they want to do, and I'm sure Nick can jump on that.
I think when you talk about groundswell of this bringing other things, I think actually what's more interesting in the city now is not what some civic fathers who actually don't even live in the city are wanting to do with city land, but ideas coming from Raleigh, St. Louis, or other things that are more organic that make the city a little more unique and interesting.
Guys, thanks. I appreciate your time and starting us off here tonight. We're going to have some leaders from community organizations, some of which Nick kind of alluded to there. But first, we took the show on the road via Google Hangout to New York City, where we spoke earlier this week with an urban designer on this issue. One of the proponents of what we're calling the arch tax has said this is about more than our arch grounds or our parks and our green spaces. This is about making St. Louis a better place to live. And joining us from New York is Rachel Abrams with Turnstone Consulting. And Rachel tries to do just that, make cities a better place to live. First, just tell us a little bit about your work and what you do.
I basically tell stories about places to the public and to city agencies to help them understand what a future of placemaking could be in the places that they live and work.
So can something like our parks, like our arch grounds, can that make St. Louis a better place to live? That's a pretty tall order.
A public place in a city is the kind of an interface, the meeting point where people see how their tax dollars get spent, but it's also a place where they can go to be participants in their communities and come together.
Can $780 million is what they say this will roughly raise over the 20-year life of this tax. Can that do something to radically change or improve the arch grounds and our parks and other green spaces, or is that even the right question to ask? Is it about more than money?
If things are successful, if programs are put in place that far reach beyond the initial public imagination of what could be, then the accountability of the people that raise the money from people's taxes shifts to a place where people feel positive that actually that is exactly the kind of thing that public resources should be spent on, and that they choose by participating in them, by making those places successful, to kind of give them a thumbs up, to give them a kind of democratic seal of approval as well.
But we're still talking about public money and public spaces.
If you could demonstrate that as a token, as an icon, a signifier of change in the whole city, this project is the center of a network of initiatives and programs of change to both make the city more accessible, to activate dead space, to bring publics together in places that are not privately owned for making money off consumers necessarily, that bring together different kinds of people, different constituencies from the city in ways that they weren't brought together before.
Is this important to our suburban friends who maybe visit the city for ball games and whatnot from time to time? Is this something we should care about as a larger region?
You can't have a center unless there's a periphery. And it can't be a vibrant hub unless it's part of a network of other places that think of it in a positive way. So absolutely, it's a local issue. It's going to affect the neighborhood around it. I'm just thinking about the tension there was about Atlantic Yards in New York City when the Barclays Center was in plan. And it's been interesting to witness how a mixture of things, how the change on the landscape, the actual appearance of the building, and then the network of stars that have come to perform there, and the way the press, certain corners of the press have got behind the project, sort of shifted the where the loudest voices were.
Okay, so you've worked in cities all over the world. Let's talk about the future and what you're working on now. Help us cast that vision, if you will, a little bit. What is working around the world? What do you think we should be looking at here in St. Louis?
I think that this idea of networks within cities is really interesting, and also this intersection of both a kind of bunch of things. The intersection between public and private groups within these kinds of debates is really interesting. The role of non-governmental groups and anyone representing citizens as well as the city at large. I also think that the intersection between digital space and physical place is really, really important to think about. Probably looking at post-Olympics legacies around the world is a pretty interesting one. And certainly Barcelona did very well and established a global reputation for making the most of the Olympic Park after the games had finished. It remains an extremely vibrant and restored part of that beachfront town.
If a city is to get to where we're talking about this vision here, what's the path? What is it going to take?
It's really important to think about, first of all, what the kind of easy wins are. What would be worth doing immediately and can be put into effect immediately to demonstrate that we're on our way, that is easy in the sense of it's straightforward to put into action, but also doesn't cost a lot and demonstrates an improvement right away. Then you're in a much better place. You've created a foundation from which to introduce longer term, slightly more difficult, slightly more resource intensive change. There's the example in New York is that if it's going to take a generation to build the Second Avenue subway, in the meantime, putting express bus routes into cities where it takes ages to dig up a street or a whole line could go. I think that's a kind of demonstration of there's a now and a next.
Tell me more what you mean by that, because we have heard that in the discussion around this arch tax about the future of St. Louis.
Well, I'm in a city that is full of stories about itself here in New York City, and you can tell by my accent I'm a Brit, and I grew up in London, also full of history, steeped in it, up to its neck in it, to the point where in the 80s and 90s it was actually quite difficult to move ahead from post-war rebuilding to a sense of what city centres could be. I think in St. Louis, and everything I've read and heard about this project, is it's focused on a kind of 20th century idea of having a physical place and a very visible physical icon that's fixed in a location that people know it for. And now we're in an age where images of cities are transferred all over the place.
That story that has to be told.
Right, absolutely. And having it be an authentic one that people believe and want to tell themselves to other people about the place they're from.
Rachel Abrams from New York, thanks so much for your time and for enlightening our conversation tonight. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All right, we're back in the studio to talk to a panel of folks from different organizations here in St. Louis that are heavily involved in the topics we're talking about tonight. Todd Antoine from Great Rivers Greenway, and Jennifer Allen, TrailNet, and Ryan McClure from City Arch River. Let me start by going kind of big picture for a second. I want to know what you think St. Louis might look like in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now. First of all, we'll be very surprised that we live so long. I think 50 years. But once we get over that, what might we see? Will our city look different than it did? Will the amount of change be different than it was in those time periods previously?
Absolutely. I think that you will see a great amount of change here. 10 years is a blink of an eye, but I think if you look at 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you can really make a difference. I know from our perspective at Great Rivers Greenway, we are still moving ahead and building many miles of trails and greenways throughout the system in the region. So you'll see very soon, be able to have folks who will be able to bike from St. Charles to downtown, from Alton to downtown, from South County to Maryland Heights, all that. I think what you're going to see too is I think you'll see more in terms of more transit, you'll see more interconnected development where neighborhoods and communities are more connected, trying to make the streets and the fabric of our communities better so that folks can be able to go out for more biking and walking, just getting out and enjoying all of the great parks and natural areas that we have.
Similar visions?
Yeah, a lot more connection. I don't want to repeat everything that Todd said, but I think the in-betweens between all of the different neighborhoods and the different districts that we've seen begin to redevelop, some of the poster children for that, Old North St. Louis, the Grove, Cherokee Street, Beyond Housing is doing work out in Pagedale, but it's like what's in between all of that. So I really think that along with the transit and trails, also on-street bike connections as well, I think we'll see a lot more.
Is this just going to happen because we're already growing and we're just on that trajectory, or is this something we have to be intentional about?
We have to be intentional.
Yes.
I'll let you guys speak too, but I think we're building a lot more collaboration as well. So there's definitely the political side of things, and there's so many needs. So how that balances out. So it's not going to just happen. But what I've seen, I've been working in St. Louis for 4 years now. That collaboration and partnership is really kicking off.
And I think that Tuesday's vote was really a sign that we can think regional. Voters in St. Louis County and St. Louis City got together and they decided, we're going to improve our region through better parks and trails and investing in the arch grounds. St. Louis County and St. Louis City, we can think as neighbors.
But as Nick and Jason and Amir brought up, we didn't think, or rather this particular vote wasn't representative of a larger region. Do we have to be more intentional about that?
Well, I think there have been conversations going on, not around the arch per se, but along all the museums that we have in the Zoo Museum District and whatnot. And I do think that eventually there's going to be conversations and action taken where we include more of the metropolitan area, both Missouri and in Illinois, to take advantage of the attractions that we have not only in the city and the county, but also throughout the greater region, and take greater appreciation and funding for the maintenance of those throughout the whole entire region.
What else needs to happen? I guess first let me ask, how big of an impact do you see this tax having on the things we're talking about here? Is this a lot of money, or is this just a little bit to get us by?
Well, from Great Rivers Greenway's perspective, this is a lot of money. This is essentially doubling the income that we take in. So it's going to have profound change upon the way that we work with a lot of different partners, communities, organizations to build a system, because we'll be able to really start to build more of it more quickly. So from our perspective, it's really transformative in terms of the amount of what we'll be able to do and really build more of the River Ring system all throughout St. Charles, St. Louis, and St. Louis City.
And Prop P was definitely huge for the City Arch River project. It allows us to fund $90 million of the $380 million project. So it sets us well on our way. We had already gotten $69 million in federal, state, and local funding. $59 million has already been raised privately, and we'll have more by the end of May. So total $250 million will be funded privately for the arch grounds. But the public stepped up, and they said that this is something they want to invest in, and it's a big deal for the project.
What else do we need to do besides the tax? Is there something else, not just for the arch? You mentioned the private partnership, but do we need to be investing in any other ways? What other messages, what other stories, like Rachel was talking about, need to be sold? Is that the right word? I don't know.
Well,
that was 3 questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the public-private partnership is huge, and if you look at the City Arch River project, I mean, it's a true partnership. It's a partnership with MoDOT, the City of St. Louis, National Park Service, Great Rivers Greenway. We can't do that project without partnership and collaborative working together. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And I think, all around the country, you see these public-private partnerships that are really getting projects like this done. And with, the National Park Service as an example, you've got Golden Gate Conservancy in San Francisco and the Trust for the National Mall. I think this is a growing trend.
What I was going to add is I think the user experience. So I think, if you think of someone visiting the Arch grounds, they've walked up to the Arch, they've touched it, and they're like, what's next? We want them to stay here a couple of days. And what's the ease with which they can go from all of the different neighborhoods we have? Can they hop on a bus and just wait 5 minutes? Can they get on a bike facility and go north? So I think that experience that goes beyond the Arch grounds, which is going to be a great experience when they're there, but it's the whole city and how they get to experience that. So I think learning to think that way in terms of districts and how people connect to those is really important.
Why is all of this important to our region? Is it important to our region? Is it important to our economy? Wouldn't it be better if we could just get another Ford plant back and more jobs? Or can this really do anything, what we're talking about, to make this place a better place to live?
You have to think about that. We're not just competing in St. Louis here with Des Moines and Kansas City or Indianapolis. We're competing against London, against Moscow, against Mexico City in terms of creating a quality of life here in the region that attracts and retains not only young people, but people of all ages here. And it's really important for us to really look at how we can build this network out and make really good quality places for folks, public places for them, if it's in their local neighborhood or in their local community park, or if it's at the Arch grounds. It's about making a great dynamic city work and function well so that we can be able to easily, from bike to walking to transit, being able to connect to all of it rather easily and making it a great place.
Are we a sustainable city? Are we a walkable city?
In some ways, yes. I think, yeah, in some ways, yeah. I mean, we have different districts. I mean, if you think of the places where you take family and friends that visit, you're probably taking them to a fairly walkable place where you can go to a restaurant, do some window shopping and such. So again, I think it's connecting those places and filling in the gaps. So I was going to add to the comment about, why is this important to our economy? It's what people are demanding. So one fact that's really interesting is that the millennial generation that's in their 20s and 30s, because they're bigger than the generation before and after them, it's really critical in the next 5 to 10 years that we're able to retain and attract them. And they move to cities not based on job, it's this quality of life that we're talking about. So you can see the direct impact to our economy if we have the jobs available for them, et cetera.
Something that's come up on the show previously, and then again back to what we heard here from Rachel and what I was trying to ask you earlier, I think, but that the idea of the story that we have to tell about ourselves. How important is what we're talking about to that story, and how do you tell that story to people who may not care or maybe voted against this tax?
Well, I think what you have to look at is how, as a community, as a region, we all live in St. Louis. We all love the city. We all love, the region that we're from here, and that we have to think about there are ways that we have to go and help to make a better quality of life for all of us. And there's people I've talked to that have told me, said, I don't go out and bike at all, but I appreciate the fact that option's out there for someone. Mm-hmm. It might be for my grandchild, or it might be for my neighbor or something, but that I appreciate the fact that trail is out in my community, and it's an option for people to use.
I can relate. I was excited to see the new bike path on the new bridge over the Missouri River out in the Chesterfield Valley, and I don't even own a bike, but it seemed exciting that it was there. I'm not the one being interviewed though, so please go ahead.
Well, no, I think St. Louis has a great story to tell. I think we as St. Louisans don't always do the greatest job of, we don't do it justice and have sometimes an inferiority complex about our city, but we just live in a place that is great already, but has so much potential, and I just think we just need to get better at telling that story.
I'm going to exclude you from this question because I think you've already answered it, but I want to know, did this passage signal any change in mindset or tell us anything about our citizenry?
Well, I think from my perspective at Great Rivers Greenway, we really felt that it's a way for us to really be able to do what we've been doing for the past 10 years to really advance that. And I think it's a great testament to St. Louis to want to make that investment in its future.
I guess I'm just wondering if we're going to look, am I making too much of it to say, is this a time when we'll look back and we started the conversation with the future, will we look back to this time and say, yeah, we chose in a bad economy to invest? Is it that significant, or am I making too much?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is significant. I think it's historians 50 years from now will look back at the decision that residents made back, earlier this week and say that was something that really was transformed the St. Louis region.
Okay, we're going to leave it there, and we're going to skip over to social media because we want to make sure we have your voice in tonight's conversation.
Welcome to Jefferson National Expansion Memorial.
On sunny afternoons in the city, all you have to do is look up.
Just look at it. Isn't it gorgeous?
Visitors from near and far
We're from Carmel, Indiana.
I'm taking a lunch break.
all see it differently.
I think it's a very, very good thing for St. Louis. It's one of the things that keeps us on the map.
Beautiful day today, and looking over the city, it was fun.
And while only about a third of the Prop P funds actually go to the monument grounds, it's not surprising that it's been branded the Arch Tax. So we decided to head straight to the source to ask people,
what does the arch mean to St. Louis? And
I think a lot of people view the arch as opportunity.
for the people who live here, it might be a memory.
We were in elementary school when the last piece was put in and everything stopped and they rolled a television into all the classrooms and we got to watch the last piece go in, which was really cool.
All visitors to the Gateway Arch Complex.
And the people who come to visit think it's pretty cool too.
I enjoy history, and the whole Western expansion is something that I've always been interested in.
But the longer you're here, the more you notice. It's not just a monument.
See it, enjoy it, walk, run. A lot of people jog down here. People walk their dogs and stroll with their babies.
It's just very beautiful. It's on the river. It's a very nice area.
It's a place to gather and a place that sets us apart.
Sometimes hard, to keep the skylines apart. Our skyline is immediately recognizable, so therefore we are immediately recognizable. So it means an awful lot to the city.
And of course, it means expanding westward. Or maybe it just means expanding here. For Stay Tuned, this is Jennifer Long reporting.
We're hearing some really important things that you're tweeting using the hashtag StayTunedSTL. We want you to continue if you have questions, comments, what's resonating to you. We want to hear. We also have an after show, so stick around and let's see what you're continuing to say on social media.
I think just to clarify that last tweet, the St. Charles was in the language, but they're not going to see the money from this particular tax that was passed. Okay, all of you were there in the ballot booths. They're not even booths anymore. They're touchscreens, I suppose. But nevertheless, you all were voting this past week. We have our folks from the community, Michael Allen from the Preservation Research Office, Sarah Thompson, a PR professional, and Joe Wilson, a law student at SLU. Why was it important for you to go out and vote for this? Or, let me rephrase, vote in this election.
Well, I think that St. Louis doesn't often have a chance to vote on anything with any regional impact. And One of the things we're seeing as we look at things like the 2010 census numbers, where the city's losing population, the county's starting to lose population, is if we don't start implementing planning mechanisms that cut across these regional divides, we're going to be at a loss. We're not going to be competitive nationally. So I thought this was really crucial. If flawed, I personally don't like sales tax increases, and I think this might be the last one we're going to see for a while because of some of the bite back on it. But I think what it's doing is really crucial. We got to plan. We got to plan physical spaces, economic development all across the region, and it's a shame St. Charles County is not part of it, but you go in with the army you can raise, not the army you want to have.
So it was a chance to vote on a vision, so to speak, on policy almost.
Right, and one of the great things about it, I started out very critical of the so-called arch tax, but what I saw as the case was being made was that here's this big project that people criticize for not having enough in it to reach out to neighborhoods, to spur job creation. It's just a single big downtown project. Well, here it is getting put in a framework where it's actually part of a cohesive strategy for green space maintenance and development across the region. That's exactly what we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think the strategy, even though there wasn't necessarily a campaign officially as we would think about it, but I think it was very strategically well planned out and executed brilliantly. I mean, on YouTube, I don't know how many times I saw the video. And frankly, at this time, I mean, how are you not going to want to support the parks beautification projects? I mean, I think everyone's sort of looking ahead to what the final result would be. But I would agree with you. I mean, I don't think when you like kind of dug beneath the surface, I said it wasn't sort of as vanilla, the sort of bundled package, if you will, as it was, but it's still at the same time hard to go against because I think everyone wants to kind of have this common space. I think we looked at City Garden and you go down in the summer and you see the diversity, you see the families, but and I think people want to see that in other areas. And I love our parks here, both in the city and the county. I love Forest Park, so it's hard not to support that. But from not a political perspective, but I do think from, as you bring in with taxes and stuff, I think it was kind of scratching in some areas that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with, so.
I just think it was important because if we don't invest in ourselves, nobody else is going to. We talk about, I've seen a bunch of people tweeting about, really what we need to be focusing on is trying to bring more jobs into town. What we need to be focusing on is making our town safer. Those are all great points, but if we make only one of those things our focus, the job is never really gonna get done with that. We can make safety our only focus, but our town will never be safe enough for everybody all the time, across the board.
Well, do you think something like this might have an impact on safety or other aspects that we're trying to work on at the same time?
It can start to be. Michael, actually, you posted an article the other day from a website that Next City, and it was talking about well-maintained green spaces actually can help lower crime because if people care enough to be consistently around there, if there's always maintenance crews around there, if there's always people who are in the park, it becomes places that are less likely to be places where crime occurs. So in an indirect way, yes, this park can help that, but
and not just that, I'm saying overall, we've talked about livability, sustainability.
I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, I think there's sort of surveys and studies that have always said, I mean, Operation Brightside has been around in St. Louis for a long time. And the idea behind that was beautification projects and with the community coming together to want sort of landscaped areas coming together to want that. It makes people feel more integrated and connected and proud of where they live and thus their city. And so I think there's really great projects and programs. And I think this will be one of them. But again, I think the crime issue and stuff, listen, at the end of the day, though, and here's me playing devil's advocate. I mean, you could put millions and millions of dollars, but if people are still, I'm not trying to change the topic of the show, but if you still have poverty, if you still have, and yes, people from all class levels can go to common space, which is what's so great about our parks. But if you still have these sort of, viruses within our society and our communities that still aren't addressed, I think it's a problem. And if you ask, I think what was so interesting about this is if you went by like ward to ward, different neighborhoods in the county and got the different perspectives, it was interesting. The people who weren't in support of it were actually sometimes on different ends of the spectrums, but the reason they weren't for it were for very different reasons. It's like, hey, something else is a priority in my ward, in my neighborhood. So it's really, really interesting. It's so hard to not want this because it has so many positive things, but there's just so much more, isn't there?
Right, and just picking up on Sarah saying the virus in the community, and I'm thinking about another green space issue that's a virus in the community, and that is the high rate of vacant land and vacant building stock in the region. And one thing I would like to see coming out of Proposition P is a regional effort to deal with the vacancy crisis. It's very clear at this point that the city's land reutilization authority is not cutting it. It doesn't do enough to recycle property, get it back on the tax rolls, clean and beautify it. St. Louis County just had to tear down 41 homes in a strip mall up in Glasgow Village. They're starting to have to foreclose, more tax foreclosures and dealing with inventory vacant property. These things are all adding up to a regional problem. And there's no regional Great Rivers Greenway system for tax foreclosure and vacant property, a really motivated and aggressive land bank. Of course, that's something that won't happen until the city is part of the county in some ways, but that's just one issue that comes out of it. It's like, this is green space, this is terrifying, nobody wants to live next door to a vacant building or a vacant house. People might want to live next door to a beautiful park. We got to work on both fronts.
Well, okay, so that's another. This is a tangent allowed zone, so go for it. No, I like that. What other issues? Anything else springing out of this?
We talked a little bit about, some of the people at the table earlier talked about thinking about this thinking about the arch tax and the arch in a regional way. And this was a great step forward for a community that traditionally doesn't think about a lot of things regionally. There's a lot of infighting between the million municipalities that make up the St. Louis the St. Louis region, but this was about the closest I think that we've gotten to a solid step forward, that we're admitting that this is a regional landmark, that this is something that we all should probably be paying into, even if some people were against it. This is not as awesome a moment of yes, we're a region, we're all cohesive on this. No, this is not that. This was a baby step forward.
Well, you mentioned that we're going off on tangents, but let's be honest, this wasn't solely just about the arch. I mean, I know people flat out that when I talk to them, they're like, the only reason I'm supporting this is I love the park that's down the street from me. It's underfunded, and I want it to have money. It had absolutely, for some people I know, nothing to do with the greenways and the arch. There's other people who it was solely about the arch, and there's other people who, I mean, it's a mixed bag, and so I think that's why it's we can't, of course, for the sake of the show, really focus on the arch tax. But I think depending, and again, I bring it back to the diversity of people who were in support of this, it's really quite interesting. Everyone came at it from, at least people I talked to, and even myself, from different angles of what they wanted to support.
Well, and that goes back to it was a genius strategy, even if it went under the radar, perhaps.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, responding to that, just to pick up on the arch itself, I don't know why we're so ashamed of the idea of beautifying the arch, the symbol of our city. The grounds are the front door to the region, and moving beyond these sort of issues of, I think the opposition maybe had this tone of a little bit of parochialism, well, the arch isn't important because we need to develop parks in this neighborhood or parks over here, or we need more jobs downtown. But it's this is how the whole world views St. Louis. Visitors come from all over. This is the classic argument that Ryan and others are making, and it's really important. You come downtown, you see this ugly, massive highway infrastructure, you see this horrible riverfront. These are things that, they're blemishes, and they really do impact our position in the nation, how people come and perceive us, and how locals perceive downtown and the experience of visiting the arch.
Okay, I'll give you the same. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, you talked about that as the front door to our city, as the front door to our region. We don't let anybody in the front door. It's tough to get to the park.
Right.
You have to take a highway. There's no easy way to get there. I drove around for a while trying to find parking, and even I was amazed that it wasn't that easy to get around. It wasn't that easy. A lot of the views on Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard right there weren't exactly majestic views. It wasn't.
When are we going to clean up that water? That water is so dirty. I don't understand what's going on.
It's going to be great, though. I think really in the end, I think I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, of course, it's not going to happen in the next 6 months or anything, but I do think in the end, it's something that people are going to enjoy, and they'll be, I don't know if people will be thankful for the fact that they're paying the extra taxes, but I know everyone is going to feel that they definitely are going to benefit from it and enjoy going to it.
I want you guys to run with the 50-year question. Is this a point where we're changing to some degree? Is this a turning point in our future?
It's a baby step. This is, we got everybody together and we actually agreed enough on something to start funding it and to start working forward on it, and we can start looking at some bigger, better things down the line.
Was it an easy win? As we heard earlier, sometimes you need in the Google Hangout there, she talked about some easy wins.
I think, for me, I don't know, it's a tough one because, again, I think just when you look at the diversity of St. Louis, I think the people who are in support of this, you could probably narrow into a certain genre of people, because there's folks from different areas I know who were not in support of it, and others who were. But So I think it's a mixed bag, but I think people want to come together, people want to utilize the same space, but I think again, this proposition, because it was at this time, it made it for a slightly easier pass than it had if it had been at a different time.
Well, and I didn't let you answer the future question either.
Oh, yeah.
Right, well, and I want to pick up on both of you. I think that this is not an easy win in terms of a 50-year mark, because we excluded St. Charles County from the equation. That made it an easy win for the moment. So what Joe said is this being a baby step. It's absolutely a baby step, and it's not necessarily visionary to have this conversation without St. Charles County, without Jefferson County, without the Metro East. This is a stopgap that's really effective. It's really wonderful. But to say this is the launching pad for truly regional decision making, I think we got the state legislature to authorize this for 3 counties, and then the city and the county jumped, especially the city, without getting the county, St. Charles County, on board. I mean, if we cannot have discussions with St. Charles County, if our stance in the city and St. Louis County stance are timid in the face of St. Charles County, which is continuing to grow, has a huge population, huge tax base, we're not really going to get very far.
All right, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Margie tells me we are trending on Twitter, so it's only appropriate that we go back to Twitter. Okay, we're here with Bruce Lindsay from Washington University, from the Sam Fox School of Architecture. You've been listening in tonight, and I'm curious what you think about what we've been talking about so far. I guess we'll start with where we just picked up. How significant is this particular passage in our future?
It's huge. It's amazing. First of all, I don't get where the arch tax comes from.
Why we call it that?
Yeah, Prop P. It's for people, parks, and possibilities. I mean, the fact that Great Rivers Greenway is developing a network across different scales is not just a physical, sustainable infrastructure. It's an idea of when you connect things, things change and things happen. Imagine the United States without the interstate highways. I mean, that's the local sort of idea that is represented by that. The Arch Grounds is a big part of it. But also imagine if, for instance, the success of Forest Park, which is one of the great success stories of any city of the last 30 years, is happening all over the county in relationship to the funding that's going to come for the parks in addition to the Arch Grounds. So I think it's amazing.
Okay, I like the optimism, but we also heard early in the program that we've seen big ideas before in St. Louis, not to be negative, but that haven't worked out. The mall downtown, Union Station, different things. Why will this be any different?
Yeah, we didn't mention the other ones, though, that have been great success stories, like City Garden, the 6440 corridor that was done on budget, on time, a city evolving and growing and overcoming its failures. I think we need to remember those successes, and I think this will be one of them. We also forget that the Arch Grounds has contributed greatly to the city over a very long period of time, 70 years. Imagine 1947. Harry Richmond, a sophomore in the School of Architecture at Washington University, had the task of opening 172 entries to one of the largest architectural competitions that had ever been offered. And he looked at number 144 and he said, that one's going to win. And it did. And it changed the city of St. Louis. Not only did that Arch Grounds design and eventually its construction change the city, but all of the other competition entries contributed to the imagination and the vision of what the city could be in the future.
And it was probably the biggest in terms of bold ambitions too, was it not?
Nobody had seen anything like it. In fact, there's a funny story. When they opened up the card on the back, they were anonymous submissions. They saw the name Saarinen and thought it was his famous father, Elio, instead of Eero, the younger son of the famous architect. And so they sent a letter to the famous father saying he'd won. And of course, they had to send a letter the next day telling Elio that they'd made a mistake and Eero, the son, had actually won.
So how do we reinvigorate that that sense of big ambitions? Do we have a taste for high design like the Arch in this region, and should we have more if we don't?
Design matters, and design is a very strong economic investment. We talk a lot about what it costs, but 1961, you're faced with the challenge of building the arch. It had been funded by Congress. How much would you pay to build it?
I'm sorry, I have no idea.
$11 million. That's what it cost in 1961 to build the arch. What's it worth now? We talk about what it's going to cost, but we don't talk about the value of that investment. I mean, the city of St. Louis without the arch, I can't even imagine it. If Forest Park is the civic space that defines our relationship with each other, the arch defines the relationship of the city of St. Louis to the Mississippi River, and by extension, north, south, and east and west. And that's pretty amazing.
I want to just go back to one more thing. We have a few seconds left, but the idea of this telling of the story. We've talked about this on the program before. Is this important to how we tell our own story to ourselves and to the world?
It is. It's incredibly important. We have a big advantage because the arch is known around the world as not only a great work of modern art, but also as the symbol of St. Louis. And that's something to be proud of and something to build on.
And last question, 50 years from now, how do you see St. Louis?
Oh, man. I see it as a vital city that young people want to come and start businesses in. I see parks flourishing and helping communities redevelop. And I see a city next to a river that sort of faces the arch.
Bruce Lindsay from the Architecture School at WashU, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We got to get more of those architects to stay in town and do that design you're talking about.
Yeah,
we appreciate it. All right, stay with us online. If you're not already, we're going to have a post show where we're going to continue some of the thoughts we're having here with everyone who was on the show tonight. Thanks for watching. Okay, thanks for sticking around. If you're still watching, if you can hear the sound of my voice, then you are on the interwebs. My brain is fried, but like in a good way. It was overstimulated, perhaps. So I know you guys have had some more time to kind of sit back and think a little bit. Take this conversation where you wish it would have gone. Bruce, we were just going. What else? The time flew there for us. What else was on your mind?
Well, how the redevelopment of the Arch Grounds is not only restoring an amazing monument and a national park, but it's better connecting that incredible asset to the city in all sorts of ways. Just as an example, the north end development of the park is going to provide a local park for the residents of Washington Avenue that they've never had before.
This is where the parking garage is now, currently.
Yeah, they're going to be able to walk down, walk their dog, take their kids to the park in a way that they've never been able to do before.
Well, Joe said he can't park down there now. I mean, where's he going to? We're taking away the parking garage.
It's an amazing idea. It's so simple. Instead of going to the arch to see the arch, you're going to go to the city and then go to the arch. And the way that's going to happen is by reorganizing the parking. The parking is going to be in the city. It's going to be a collective agreement between existing parking garages and some new ones with some new technology, remote ticketing that allows you to know when you have your appointment to go up to the arch, and you're going to be able to explore the city and walk straight into the new entrance to the arch.
I think that's one of the most brilliant parts of the Van Valkenburg plan. I mean, reorienting that whole tourist experience. We're so used to that. As Joe was saying, get off the highway, try to figure out how to get down there as quick as you can, but this is going to be a truly urban experience. Right now, you can have it as a largely pastoral, largely reflective experience. You can go to the arch now without ever setting foot in downtown St. Louis. And if you're going to come by car now, you have to experience the city. And the city and the approach to the grounds will be so much more beautiful. I mean, the reason people don't make that walk now as often as they could is because it's just so visually confusing, unpleasant. Walking from Washington Avenue to the arch is probably the worst way to approach it under that elevated section of the highway. And there are lots of ways to deal with that. I know removing the highway has been a big idea that's been on the table, but it's not the only way to make that area more attractive. There's things that could have been done all along, but sometimes it does take this vision, this big push, and this, as Bruce said, seeing the value in the long-term investment, which we don't do often enough in St. Louis.
Okay, why, if it's going to work, if we're optimistic about this, why is it working out? Because this is not the first time we've tried to revitalize the Arch Grounds, and some of the same players, correct, have tried before. Why do you think it'll work now?
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially people have been discussing improving the Arch Grounds since the arch was completed in 1965.
And were the Arch Grounds ever completed from the original?
No, the park originally was conceived as being on both sides of the river. So there's parts of it that were never built. And you're right, the plans that have been done since even the arch was just completed would fill a room.
Yeah. Right. But I think, you know, to answer your question, I think, and this goes to what I said earlier, having all of these players at the table at the same time working towards a common goal is just a really amazing thing to watch. So you've got MoDOT, City of St. Louis, you've got Metro, the National Park Service. We have a technical advisory group made up of, there's like 40 members representing different public agencies that have a stake in what happens on the Arch Grounds and around it. And they're all working together for a common goal.
Okay, I want to let's bring the trained skeptics back into the conversation. Is it as rosy as the conversation's has kind of moved in a pretty optimistic trajectory? What's been on your mind sitting and watching our conversation tonight?
Well, one thing that's still unresolved is the fact that they still have to raise a lot of money. My understanding is that on the private money side, that by the end of this month, there'll be up to $100 million money that's been raised. So there's still $120, $150 million that needs to be raised to realize the rest of the plan. I'm not saying they can't do it, but obviously $150 million is not something that you can just pull out from nowhere. So it has to come from somewhere, and will the community be able to support that?
Yeah, and I may have to shout because I don't have a mic or lean in really close. But I do.
We did that for comedic purposes.
Yeah.
Just put your arm around.
The hijinks are ensuing. But I think that the other thing is I talked a little bit about tourism. Is this going to be an area for residents of the city and for the region that people are going to go to on a regular basis? I mean, I live admittingly in a remote part of the city in the 16th Ward, and I go to a lot of parts of St. Louis that are basically situated in a lot of neighborhoods. And I go downtown a lot, but since I've moved here, I've never gone up in the arch, and I've rarely kind of walked around this. Now, if this is transformed into something that becomes an event space that people in the community want to go to, then that we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that actually comes to pass.
And I think do you want to see how the money gets spent now? Like there's people out there in the community who are like, well, I'm paying for this, I might as well go see it now. Like this, just the fact that we're all having this conversation again about, oh yeah, the arch is there. Like people are going to start showing up again.
Like we are now more aware than ever that we are all owners of that site.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I think the one thing that gets left out of this conversation sometimes is that even though maybe we feel like we own it more, it's still a National Park Service space. And if you want to use it, you have to put an application through the National Park Service. It's not something that you can decide to have a picnic at the Arch and you're going to bring your whole family.
A large
event. It's not a city park. It's not the same thing. So.
But you can go and have a picnic on the ground.
Yeah. No, you know what I mean. Depending on how big your family is.
You haven't seen his picnics.
To get radio to perform on it, it's going to be a little bit more arduous or something like that.
You started to say something.
I actually work downtown, so seeing people that are walking their dogs and taking their lunch breaks and seeing how crowded City Garden gets, I really do think people will use that. And I'm someone that walks down and touches the arch every couple of months. So I think those connections really are going to be well used. I think they will be well used. And I think they will attract people. I mean, I'm interested in the fact that I think I heard the stat that there's only 4 months supply left of rental units downtown. Mm-hmm. So when the arch is done, you can imagine, if that demand really is there, I think people are going to be looking for a quality of life like that. So.
You start to say something?
Just as from the same way as somebody who I live downtown, and one of the reasons why City Garden works, I think, is because it's a relatively small space. So it produces that sort of density and vitality that you're looking for. This is a large space. It would be nice to see people there, but I think people are going to be sort of scattered out there, And that's one of the fears I have, that, you know, they're going to build all this and it's just going to look like, you know, Cavalry Cemetery or something.
Bruce, you started to say something.
Yeah, it is a large park, but again, the redevelopment of the north end is going to be a park within a park of sorts. The other thing that is an important part of the redevelopment plan is the accessibility of the park is now very difficult for many people. You can't get to the river if you are in a wheelchair, or even if you have some difficulty walking. And so the entire network of paths and access and circulation is going to be completely redone.
And I guess to Nick's point too, because does it go back to what you were saying? It's not so much that we will go to see the arch, but we will go downtown where the arch is, maybe more.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of the turnaround of the Van Valkenburg plan. Is that you go to the city and then go to the arch, and now you go to the arch and then leave, because that's where the parking is, and that's how you get in and out. Now you'll go to the city, walk across this new park that.
Over a highway.
Over the highway.
Which is, yeah. I think, POO for short.
Yes, yeah. but then...
maybe they really need to work on that one.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so can we go back maybe via Great Rivers Greenway to the regional ideas that we've been talking about? You mentioned earlier the original design included both sides of the river. We've talked a lot about St. Charles County and how we got to get to what do we need to do on the other side of the river in terms of bringing us together?
These guys are doing it.
Well, you know, at the same time the Great Rivers Greenway was created back in 2000, the voters in Madison and St. Clair County created the Metro East Park and Recreation District, which is our sister district in the region. They are, because of the tax base is smaller in those two counties, they don't generate the same amount of income, but they do work a lot with the different jurisdictions. We work with them on the bridge crossings. So we've worked together on McKinley Bridge, Old Chain of Rocks Bridge. It'd be great. They're looking at plans to extend the trail on the Illinois side down to the Eads Bridge and then further to Malcolm Martin Park there, which is part of the grand plan for the arch grounds and everything, and then continue south. So I think that's going to happen, and that's already in process.
So maybe we've already had some of those easy wins that we were hearing about earlier from the young woman from New York City, and then now this is a big one. You talk about the Chain of Rocks, we got City Garden, we got some.
Well, and I think the thing to think about is that when voters created the district back in 2000, you know, that was really, I mean, this Great Rivers Greenway is really the only district of its kind in the United States. There's nothing like us at all that's based like this. You know, usually it's a county or it's a city park department that's building the trails. Like what you see in New York is done by the city of New York. What you see out in Chicago is by park districts and City of Chicago.
So is it going to lose any? Is it going to more money, more problems? Are you going to be okay with doubling your income?
Well, I think it just means that we're going to be having a lot.
By the way, that was
awesome. That made my day, really.
Those are musical lyrics.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
Yeah. No, I think
that was me singing.
It just means that we're going to be able to get more of what's in the planning pipeline now out to get engineered and get constructed here faster.
Yeah, I heard something like 20 years worth of work in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about getting 90 more miles of trails built within the next 10 years, which, you know, we're at about 120 right now. So.
How will we compare? Will that be in itself somewhat unique for a city our size?
It's getting there, yes. I mean, there's been cities that have been doing this for decades. I mean, the city of Minneapolis had the foresight to start the system up there back in the late 1800s. So, you know, we're gaining quickly though because we have Great Rivers Greenway's whose sole entity for being is to build this regional system versus other park departments that have to worry about building pavilions and playgrounds and rec centers and things like that. So
we're under a minute till our stream cuts off. Sarah's the only person that hasn't said
I think
anything.
everything's been great dialogue. You know, it's interesting while everyone's talking, I think to archival footage that I saw not too long ago for Black History Month of Percy Green going to the leg of the arch and climbing up it because African American workers were employed because it was a federal project and was sort of boycotting it. And I think that sort of when I was thinking about that, I just hope that as this moves forward, that it's inclusive of all populations of the city and that it involves them at every stage of it, and that in the end, when this is all created, that everyone feels a good benefit. I don't know why I thought of that image, but I was as we were talking.
Well,
it's like iconic in the history of our city and the arch, and so I just hope as we move forward that that's something different that we see.
And whether by design or location or whatever, but you mentioned City Garden earlier, that is a place that you see that seem to play out right now, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we leave it there? Is there anything else? We have a few seconds.
Well, I guess I'll just leave this on one thing because I guess we've been kind of a little skeptical maybe, but this is actually a very impressive achievement, I think, because you could not imagine a worse place to do any kind of construction in the world. I mean, this is the backbone of U.S. infrastructure, major highways, bridges, railway. I mean, there's basically every single thing that you could imagine that would make it hard to do any kind of construction is right there in that spot. And that, being able to get all the people on the same page and come up with a plan that works, I think is pretty good.
So it should get easier after this, right?
No, but imagine a place that connects all of those things. That's
Yeah.
really the potential of it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And ladies, thanks for your time. And thanks for watching. If you're online with us, stay tuned.